There's a state in America that has lost over 1.1 million people to other states since the 2020 census, where the population has dropped 5.5% through net domestic migration alone, where Manhattan has lost nearly 500,000 residents, and where the political conversation continues to rotate around almost everything except the actual exodus. The state is New York, and it's not even the only one collapsing on this list. Across America, while the headlines argue about international migration, the actual story for most Americans is happening at the state level, where 19 states posted negative net domestic migration in 2025, where 10 states have seen sustained outflows for the entire decade, and where the structural reasons are quantifiable, documented, and not getting better. According to the U.S. Census Bureau's Vintage 2025 estimates released January 2026, New York lost an estimated 5.5% of its population through cumulative net domestic migration since the 2020 census. According to First Trust analysis of those census numbers, the top 10 outbound states cumulatively lost over 4 million Americans to other states in just 5 years. According to the Population Reference Bureau, New York, Hawaii, Alaska, and California experienced the largest rates of population loss due to people moving out in 2025. And underneath those numbers, residents are doing the math: property tax versus property values, career growth versus career-killing taxes, family proximity versus the year-round cost of staying. And in 10 American states, the math has tipped toward we're leaving. In this countdown, we're exposing 10 states no one is staying in anymore in 2026. Not the cliché version where people are moving to Florida, the real one. The version where state policy, cost of living, climate change, fiscal mismanagement, and economic structure have all converged to make these states actively pushing residents out. One state on this list lost over 1.1 million people in 5 years. Another has had 13 consecutive years of negative net migration, the longest streak since 1945. A third lost 1.69 million Californians in 5 years and only kept its population from collapsing because international immigration absorbed most of the bleed. Think about it. You probably know someone who left. You probably know multiple people who left in the past 3 years. You probably trusted that things are improving because the national economic data said so. The states losing people aren't waiting for the national data. They're watching the moving trucks. Subscribe before your state's housing market explains it for you. Like the video if you've ever helped a friend pack a U-Haul and listen to them explain why this is the right time. Now you'll know why. Let's break it down. Number 10. Minnesota, the Twin Cities state where the brand is Minnesota Nice and the underlying data is Minnesota net negative. There's a state in the upper Midwest where the cost of living has climbed faster than wage growth, where the state income tax structure includes one of the highest top bracket rates in the nation, and where domestic outmigration has been consistent enough to flip the state into a net loser despite a stable economy. Welcome to Minnesota. Minnesota is the state that's supposed to be the Midwest's success story. Twin Cities tech and corporate scene, Mayo Clinic, 3M, Target, United Health, General Mills, a diversified economy, a reputation for civic functionality, and underneath that, a quiet exodus that has been showing up in IRS migration data for 5 consecutive years. The numbers. Minnesota's top state income tax rate is 9.85%, among the highest in the nation, and applies to households earning over approximately $193,000 for single filers. Minnesota has a state-to-state tax with an exemption that ranks among the lowest in the country at $3 million, well below the federal level. Minnesota's median home price has climbed roughly 35% since 2020, while wage growth has lagged, increasing the affordability squeeze for middle-income residents. Minnesota has consistently lost residents to South Dakota, North Dakota, and Florida, according to IRS statistics of income migration data. Minnesota's winter, while not unique to Minnesota, has become a more frequent factor in retirement age relocation decisions, with the state's median age climbing. Reddit quote, "Minnesota nice is great until you realize the cost of being nice in Minnesota now requires being upper middle class. What it's like. Living in Minnesota is like dating someone who's genuinely thoughtful, genuinely smart and genuinely surprised when you point out that their habits are getting expensive. Picture this. You're a 38-year-old professional in Minneapolis in 2026. Your job is fine. Your salary is decent. Your home appreciation has been good. Your property tax has climbed 18% in 4 years. Your state income tax bill has gone up alongside. Your parents retired to Florida. Your sister moved to Tennessee. Your college roommate moved to South Dakota for the tax structure. You're starting to consider Wisconsin. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, Minnesota's structural problem is that the state's high tax model worked when wages were strong, when housing was affordable, and when the comparative cost of living was high. All three of those conditions have shifted. Wages have lagged. Housing has climbed. Other states have made themselves more attractive on cost. Sharp contrast. Minnesota and Wisconsin are neighboring upper Midwest states. Wisconsin has a lower top income tax rate. Wisconsin has more aggressively cut taxes in the past decade. Minnesota has stayed at higher rates while watching residents drift across the St. Croix River. Same region, slightly different fiscal structures. Minnesota isn't failing because Minnesotans don't love Minnesota. It's failing because the state's tax and spend model has stopped competing with neighboring states that have repositioned themselves to attract the same residents Minnesota used to retain by default. Number 9. Maryland. The mid-Atlantic state where the federal workforce reduction hit the local economy directly, where the property tax pressure has been climbing for years, and where the migration trend has flipped negative for the first time in a generation. There's a state where federal civilian employment has been reduced significantly in 2025, where Maryland's economy depends on federal contracting more than nearly any other state, and where the housing market and tax structure have made the math harder for residents trying to stay. Welcome to Maryland. Maryland is the state most non-Marylanders only think about when they're driving from Pennsylvania to Washington, D.C. But the state's economy is anchored almost entirely to the federal government, NIH, NSA, Aberdeen Proving Ground, Pax River Naval Air Station, the federal contracting ecosystem in suburban D.C., and in 2025, the federal workforce reduction policy hit Maryland's economy more directly than any other state's. The numbers. Maryland's net domestic migration was negative 27.4 per 10,000 residents in 2025, among the worst in the nation. Maryland's federal civilian workforce includes approximately 145,000 federal employees, the third highest concentration after D.C. and Virginia. Maryland's property tax burden ranks among the top 10 in the nation. Maryland's home insurance and homeowners association costs in the suburban D.C. corridor have climbed sharply since 2020. Maryland has lost residents to Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida, according to recent IRS migration data. Reddit quote. Maryland was always Washington adjacent in the best way. Now it's Washington adjacent in the worst way. The federal jobs are cutting and the property taxes aren't. What it's like. Living in Maryland is like dating someone whose entire identity was tied to working at the same company that just announced a 30% reduction in force. Picture this. You're a 45-year-old federal contractor in suburban Maryland in 2026. Your contract has been reduced. Your colleagues have been reduced. Your kid's school district is fine, but the cost of living isn't. Your property tax bill arrived in March. You start running the numbers on Pennsylvania, just an hour north. You start running the numbers on North Carolina, where your sister just moved. You're not packing yet, but you're researching. Where it gets uncomfortable, Maryland's structural problem is the unique combination of federal government dependency and high cost of living. The federal workforce reduction has hit harder in Maryland than in Virginia because Virginia has more diversified private sector employment. The cost of living in suburban D.C. has not adjusted downward in response to the federal employment reduction. The math is brutal for households that built their lives around federal employment that's now uncertain. Sharp contrast. Maryland and Virginia are neighboring states with similar federal dependence. Virginia has more aggressively diversified into private sector technology and finance. Maryland has not. Same region, very different post-2024 trajectories. Maryland isn't failing because Marylanders don't love their state. It's failing because the federal employment foundation has been disrupted in ways the state's economic model wasn't designed to absorb. Number 8. New Jersey. The state where the property tax bill is the conversation at every backyard barbecue. where the commute to Manhattan got worse, and where the residents are quietly leaving for Pennsylvania. There's a state where the average property tax bill is the highest in the nation, where the median home price has continued to climb, while real wages have lagged, and where the commute infrastructure to New York has not kept pace with population pressure. Welcome to New Jersey. New Jersey is the state with the highest average property tax in the country. The 2024 average effective property tax rate was 2.47%, well above the national average of 1.1%. On a $500,000 home, that's $12,350 a year. On a $750,000 home, that's $18,525 a year. And it's been climbing. The numbers. New Jersey's net domestic migration was negative 2.3% in 2025. The ninth worst in the nation. New Jersey has the highest average property tax burden in the United States, with effective rates around 2.47%. New Jersey's median home price has climbed approximately 28% since 2020. New Jersey commuter rail to Manhattan has had reliability issues, with NJ Transit ranking among the lowest in customer satisfaction. New Jersey has lost residents to Pennsylvania, Florida, North Carolina, and South Carolina, according to IRS statistics of income data. Reddit quote, New Jersey is the state where the property tax bill is bigger than the mortgage payment, and people pretend that's normal. What it's like. Living in New Jersey is like dating someone with a very high-maintenance family who keeps insisting you should appreciate the access more than the cost. Picture this. You're a 42-year-old marketing professional in northern New Jersey in 2026. Your salary is good. Your commute to Manhattan is 70 minutes each way. Your property tax bill arrived for $14,800 on your $580,000 home. Your school district is excellent. Your gas station has the cheapest gas you've seen all month. Your neighbor just moved to Pennsylvania, where her property tax dropped from $12,400 to $5,900 on a similar home. You start running the math. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, New Jersey's structural problem is that the value proposition that justified the property taxes for decades, excellent schools, infrastructure to New York, suburban lifestyle, has eroded just as the costs have climbed. The schools remain strong, but the funding pressure is real. The commute infrastructure has degraded. The suburban lifestyle is being absorbed by overdevelopment. And the property tax bill keeps arriving. Sharp contrast. New Jersey and Pennsylvania are direct neighbors. Pennsylvania's average effective property tax rate is around 1.49%, significantly lower than New Jersey's 2.47%. Pennsylvania has been a primary destination for New Jersey outmigration for over a decade. Same metro area, very different fiscal pressure. New Jersey isn't failing because New Jersey isn't a great place to live. It's failing because the property tax structure has not been reformed in any meaningful way, and the residents who can move across the state line are quietly doing so. Hey, before we get into the rest of the list, the states we're about to cover are the ones where the population loss has been documented in Census Bureau Vintage 2025 estimates, in IRS statistics of income migration data, in U-Haul's annual migration report, and in moving company data that nobody outside these industries reads. If this list has been useful, hit subscribe, because the next one we're working on is 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled. And you'll want the names. Like the video if you've ever helped a friend load a U-Haul and felt the conversation shift toward, we should have done this years ago. Drop a comment if you left one of these 10 states or are considering it. Real conversations happen in the comments, and I read them. Now let's keep going. Number 7, Massachusetts. The Bay State where the housing market is the worst in the nation for affordability, where the millionaire's tax has begun showing up in IRS data, and where the high-income households are the ones leaving. There's a state where the median home price has climbed to over $600,000, where the millionaire's tax of 4% on income over $1 million was approved in 2022 and has been collected since 2023, and where the IRS migration data shows higher income households leaving at disproportionate rates. Welcome to Massachusetts. Massachusetts is the state with one of the strongest economic engines in America. Boston Tech, Cambridge Biotech, Harvard, MIT, and dozens of other major universities. Healthcare anchored by Mass General, Brigham, Beth Israel, financial services in downtown Boston. And underneath that, a housing affordability crisis that has reached a level unseen in the state's history, with the Massachusetts median home price now ranking second in the country behind Hawaii. The numbers: Massachusetts net domestic migration was negative 2.5% in 2025, the eighth worst in the nation. Massachusetts median home price has climbed to over $600,000 in 2025, second highest in the country. Massachusetts approved a 4% millionaire's tax surcharge on income over $1 million in 2022. IRS migration data shows higher-income households leaving Massachusetts at disproportionate rates following the millionaire's tax implementation. Massachusetts has lost residents to New Hampshire, Florida, Texas, and South Carolina. Reddit quote: Massachusetts has the best universities in America and the worst housing market for the people who graduated from them. What it's like. Living in Massachusetts is like dating someone with multiple PhDs who's also broke and somehow surprised about it. Picture this: you're a 35-year-old biotech researcher in Cambridge in 2026. Your salary is $140,000. You're trying to buy your first home. The median condo in your area is $750,000. The mortgage payment plus taxes plus insurance plus condo fees come to $5,200 a month. Your take-home pay is $7,800 a month. You start looking at New Hampshire. You start looking at Connecticut. You start having conversations with your spouse about Texas, where biotech is growing. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, Massachusetts' structural problem is the housing supply. The state has built far less housing per capita than the population growth required. The zoning structure makes new construction extraordinarily difficult. The result is a housing market that prices out exactly the workforce the state's economic engine needs. Sharp contrast: Massachusetts and New Hampshire are direct neighbors. New Hampshire has no state income tax and lower property taxes. New Hampshire has gained population from Massachusetts for over a decade. Same Boston metro influence, very different cost structure. Massachusetts isn't failing because Boston isn't a great city. It's failing because the housing market has not built enough supply to absorb the demand from the state's own economic engine, and the workforce that engine attracts is quietly leaving for less expensive neighbors. Number 6. Louisiana. The Cajun Coast state where the population has been declining for 4 consecutive years, where the home insurance market has been disrupted, and where the structural pressures have been compounding without resolution. There's a state where the population has declined for 4 consecutive years, where home insurance carriers have exited the market in significant numbers, where 27 rural hospitals are at risk of closing, and where the climate-driven cost pressures have made staying in Louisiana harder year over year. Welcome to Louisiana. Louisiana is the state with arguably the strongest cultural identity in America. Cajun food, New Orleans music, Mardi Gras, a unique multicultural heritage, and underneath that brand, a population that has been quietly leaving for 4 consecutive years. The numbers. Louisiana's net domestic migration was negative 3.1% in 2025, the 7th worst in the nation. Louisiana's population has declined for 4 consecutive years through 2025. Louisiana's home insurance market has had multiple major carrier exits since 2020, with rates rising sharply for those that remain. Louisiana has 27 rural hospitals at risk of closing, with 9 at immediate risk in the next 2 to 3 years. Louisiana has lost residents to Texas, Tennessee, Florida, and Mississippi, according to IRS migration data. Reddit quote: Louisiana is the state where the food is amazing, the people are amazing, the culture is amazing, and the math doesn't work. What it's like. Living in Louisiana is like dating someone you genuinely love, whose financial situation has been deteriorating for years and who keeps insisting it's about to turn around. Picture this: you're a 40-year-old in Baton Rouge in 2026. Your home insurance premium has tripled since 2020. Your kid's school district is fine. Your job is stable. Your house took some damage in the last hurricane, and the insurance settlement was 60% of what you needed for repairs. Your sister moved to Houston in 2023. Your cousin moved to Nashville in 2024. You're considering both options. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, Louisiana's structural problem is the compounding nature of the pressures. Climate change has driven hurricane frequency. Hurricane frequency has driven insurance market disruption. Insurance market disruption has driven the cost of living up. The cost of living is rising faster than the wages. The state's broader economic structure hasn't kept pace, and the residents who can leave are quietly doing so. Sharp contrast. Louisiana and Texas are neighboring Gulf states. Texas has its own challenges, but a more diversified economy and a less disrupted insurance market. Louisiana has been losing residents to Texas at significant rates. Same Gulf, different economic resilience. Louisiana isn't failing because Louisianans don't love their state. It's failing because the structural conditions of staying in Louisiana have been getting harder year over year, and the residents are running the math. Number 5. Alaska. The state with 13 consecutive years of negative net migration, the longest streak since 1945, where the working-age population continues to decline, and where the state's structural pressures have been documented for over a decade. There's a state with the longest consecutive streak of negative net migration in the United States, with 13 straight years of more people moving out than moving in, and where the state demographer has openly projected that population decline will become permanent by 2050. Welcome to Alaska. Alaska is the state with the longest documented exodus in modern American history. Population around 738,000, net negative migration since 2013. Working-age population in sustained decline. School-age population shrinking faster than the 17-year-old cohort. A state demographer who has publicly stated that population decline is now structural. The numbers. Alaska had its 13th consecutive year of negative net migration between July 2024 and July 2025, with 1,740 more people leaving than arriving. Alaska's net domestic migration was negative 3.3% in 2025, the sixth worst in the nation. Alaska's working-age population continues to decline, with the school-age population now shrinking faster than the 17-year-old cohort. Alaska's annual permanent fund dividend has dropped from peak years to roughly $1,300 per resident in recent years. Alaska state demographer David Howell has publicly projected that Alaska's population will start declining steadily by 2050. Reddit quote, "Alaska is the state where the dividend check feels smaller every year and the snow lasts longer." What it's like. Living in Alaska is like dating someone who lives 4,000 miles from civilization, has stopped getting party invitations, and keeps insisting they're not lonely. Picture this. You're a 33-year-old engineer in Anchorage in 2026. Your job is stable. Your salary is fine. Your friends keep moving to Seattle, Portland, Phoenix, and Denver. Your cousin moved to Boise in 2022. Your sister moved to Texas in 2024. The flights to visit family are $700 each way. The grocery costs are 30 to 40% above mainland prices. The permanent fund dividend has dropped. You're not packing yet, but you're researching. Where it gets uncomfortable, Alaska's structural problem is the cumulative weight of cost of living, geographic isolation, demographic decline, and the gradual erosion of the financial incentives that historically attracted people to the state. The permanent fund dividend was once a major draw. The dividend has dropped. The cost of living has risen. The economic anchors of oil, federal employment, and tourism remain but haven't grown. Sharp contrast. Alaska and Idaho are both western states with significant outdoor lifestyle appeal. Idaho has had 4 consecutive years of significant population growth. Alaska has had 13 consecutive years of decline. Same general region of America, very different demographic outcomes. Alaska isn't failing because Alaska isn't beautiful. It's failing because the structural cost of living, the limited mid-career options, and the demographic squeeze have been compounding for a decade, and the residents who can move have been doing so consistently. Number 4. Illinois. The land of Lincoln State where the Chicago tax base has been eroding, where the unfunded pension liability hit $143.5 billion, and where the population has been declining for over a decade. There's a state where Chicago has lost residents for 11 consecutive years, where the state's unfunded pension liability is the largest in the nation, where the property tax burden has continued to climb, and where the cumulative outflow has reached over 456,000 people since 2020. Welcome to Illinois. Illinois is the state with the largest fiscal problem of any state in the country. The unfunded pension liability of $143.5 billion is the largest in absolute dollars. The state's credit rating is the lowest of any state. The property tax burden ranks second in the nation, and the population has responded by leaving. The numbers. Illinois' net domestic migration was negative 3.6% in 2025, the fifth worst in the nation. Illinois has lost approximately 456,000 people through cumulative net domestic migration since 2020. Illinois has the largest state unfunded pension liability in the nation at $143.5 billion. Illinois has the second highest property tax burden in the United States, with effective rates around 2.30%. Chicago's population has declined for 11 consecutive years. Reddit quote, Illinois is the state where the politicians keep saying the worst is behind us, and the moving trucks keep saying it's not. What it's like. Living in Illinois is like dating someone whose family has been in slow-motion financial collapse for 30 years and somehow keeps insisting they're fine, just temporarily strapped. Picture this. You're a 50-year-old in suburban Chicago in 2026. You've owned your home for 22 years. Your property tax bill has more than doubled in that time. Your kids have moved to Indianapolis, Nashville, and Phoenix for jobs. Your sister moved to Florida. Your friends are starting to retire, and most are leaving. You're considering Wisconsin, just over the state line, where the property tax burden is significantly lower. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, Illinois' structural problem is the fiscal one. The pension liability has not been resolved. The state's tax structure has been increased rather than reformed. The municipal-level fiscal pressure has intensified, and the residents have been responding with their feet in Chicago, in the suburbs, and in downstate. Sharp contrast. Illinois and Indiana are direct neighbors. Indiana's property tax burden is significantly lower. Indiana has been gaining residents from Illinois for over a decade. Same Midwest, very different fiscal trajectories. Illinois isn't failing because Illinois isn't a great state. It's failing because the fiscal structure has not been reformed in any meaningful way, and the residents are quiet by choosing the neighbors. Number 3. Hawaii, the aloha state where paradise has gotten 30% more expensive, where the median home price hit $800,000 statewide, and where even native Hawaiians are leaving for the mainland. There's a state where the median home price is $800,000 statewide, where the cost of living is approximately 80% above the national average, where the population has declined in 2024 and 2025, and where even native Hawaiian families are quietly relocating to Las Vegas, Sacramento, and Seattle. Welcome to Hawaii. Hawaii is the state most Americans visit, fall in love with, and never seriously consider as a place to live. And underneath the brand, a population that has been quietly declining as the cost of living has separated permanently from local wage growth. The numbers. Hawaii's net domestic migration was negative 4.1% in 2025, the fourth worst in the nation. Hawaii's median home price was approximately $800,000 statewide in 2025, with Oahu significantly higher. Hawaii's cost of living index sits approximately 80% above the national average, the highest in the nation. Hawaii's population declined 0.15% between 2024 and 2025, one of only 5 states with population loss. Hawaii has lost residents to Nevada, California, Washington, and Texas, with Las Vegas often referred to as the 9th Hawaiian island because of the concentration of relocated Hawaiians. Reddit quote, Hawaii is the only place where you can earn the median household income and not afford to rent a one-bedroom apartment. What it's like. Living in Hawaii is like dating someone unbelievably beautiful, completely broke, and somehow expecting you to make up the difference. Picture this. You're a 41-year-old native Hawaiian in Honolulu in 2026. Your family has been on Oahu for 5 generations. Your job is fine. Your salary is $72,000. Your rent is $3,400 for a 2-bedroom. Your grocery bill is $1,200 a month. Your kids' college options are limited locally, and your savings can't cover mainland tuition. Your cousin moved to Las Vegas in 2019 and now owns a home. You're considering it. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Where it gets uncomfortable, Hawaii's structural problem is geographic and economic. The islands import nearly all goods, which compounds inflation. The housing supply is constrained by land availability. The local wage structure has not kept pace with the cost increases driven by mainland buyers and tourism. The result is a cost of living gap that has separated native and long-term residents from the state's own economic engine. Sharp contrast. Hawaii and Nevada are both western states with significant tourism economies. Nevada has continued to attract migration from Hawaii for over a decade, with significant cost of living advantages. Hawaii has been losing residents to Nevada at sustained rates. Same general Pacific orientation, very different cost structures. Hawaii isn't failing because Hawaii isn't paradise. It's failing because paradise has gotten too expensive for the people whose families have lived there for generations, and they're quietly choosing the mainland. Number 2, California. The state that has lost 1.69 million people to other states in 5 years, where the population only avoided collapse because international immigration absorbed the bleed, and where the structural pressures continue to push residents toward Texas, Arizona, and Nevada. There's a state where 1.69 million people have left for other states since 2020, where 102,000 Californians moved to Texas in a single year, and where the state's overall population only avoided steep decline because international immigration covered most of the gap. Welcome to California. California is the state with the highest absolute volume of out-migration in America. 1.69 million people lost to other states in 5 years. The largest single state-to-state migration corridor in America runs from California to Texas. The cost of living, tax structure, and quality of life concerns have driven a sustained exodus that international immigration has been only partially absorbing. The numbers. California's net domestic migration was negative 4.3% cumulatively in 2025, the third worst in the nation. California has lost 1,691,867 people through cumulative net domestic migration since 2020. California's median home price was approximately $850,000 in 2025, the second highest in the nation after Hawaii. California's top state income tax rate is 12.3%, with an additional 1% mental health surcharge for high earners, totaling 13.3%, the highest in the nation. California has lost residents primarily to Texas, Arizona, Nevada, and Florida, according to IRS migration data. Reddit quote, "California is the state where every conversation about staying eventually becomes a conversation about leaving. What it's like. Living in California is like dating someone who's spectacularly attractive, deeply talented, and has expectations that get more expensive every year. Picture this. You're a 38-year-old in Los Angeles in 2026. Your job is fine. Your salary is $135,000. Your rent is $3,800 for a 2-bedroom apartment. Your home ownership math doesn't work. Your friends keep moving to Austin, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Boise. Your sister moved to Idaho in 2021. Your college roommate moved to Florida in 2023. Your parents are talking about leaving for Nevada in 2026. You're 18 months from making the same decision. Where it gets uncomfortable, California's structural problem is the cumulative weight of housing, taxes, and policy. The housing supply has not kept pace with population for 30 years. The tax structure remains the highest in the nation. The cost of doing business has continued to push employers and employees toward neighboring states, and while California's tech and university hubs continue to attract global talent, the state's middle-income residents have been leaving consistently for over a decade. Sharp contrast. California and Texas are direct migration competitors. Texas has gained over 100,000 Californians annually for years. California has gained relatively few Texans in return. Same Sunbelt orientation, very different cost of living math. California isn't failing because California isn't beautiful. It's failing because the structural cost of staying in California has separated from middle-income wages, and the residents who can leave are quietly choosing the alternatives. Number 1. New York, the Empire State that has lost 1.1 million people in 5 years, where the cumulative outflow ranks worst in the nation in percentage terms, and where Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Long Island have all seen sustained population decline. There's a state where 1.1 million residents have left for other states since 2020, where the cumulative percentage outflow of 5.5% is the worst in America, and where the structural pressures of property tax, housing cost, fiscal pressure, and quality of life concerns have produced the most sustained migration of any state in the country. Welcome to New York. New York is the state with the worst migration profile in America. 1.1 million people lost in 5 years. The 5.5% cumulative percentage decline is the worst in the country. The state's economic engine remains powerful, but the residential population has been thinning for over a decade. The numbers. New York's net domestic migration was negative 5.5% cumulatively since 2020, the worst in the nation. New York has lost 1,106,013 people through cumulative net domestic migration since 2020. New York City has lost over 600,000 residents since 2020. New York's median home price was approximately $478,000 statewide in 2025, with the New York City Metro significantly higher. New York's top state income tax rate is 10.9%, with New York City adding an additional local income tax up to 3.876%. New York has lost residents primarily to Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, according to IRS migration data. Reddit quote, "New York is the state where the people who can afford to stay don't want to, and the people who want to stay can't afford to." What it's like. Living in New York is like dating someone who is genuinely the most charismatic person you've ever met, and whose price tag is a full-time conversation. Picture this. You're a 36-year-old in Brooklyn in 2026. Your job is in finance. Your salary is $185,000. Your rent is $4,200 for a one-bedroom. Your homeownership math doesn't work. Your friends have been leaving for Miami, Charlotte, Nashville, and Austin for 5 years. Your boss recently moved his family to Florida and now manages remotely. Your firm just opened a satellite office in Tampa. Your spouse and you are talking about Pennsylvania just for the property tax math. You're not the first. Where it gets uncomfortable, New York's structural problem is the cumulative weight of decades of pressure. The property tax burden in suburban New York is among the highest in the nation. The state and city tax stack on income is the highest combined rate in America. The housing cost in the New York Metro is unaffordable for the workforce that powers the city's economy. The infrastructure pressure has continued, and the residents have been responding consistently for over a decade. Sharp contrast. New York and Florida are the largest single migration corridor in America. 91,000 New Yorkers have moved to Florida annually for years. The reverse flow is much smaller. Same coastal orientation, very different cost of living math. New York isn't failing because New York isn't a great state. It's failing because the structural cost of staying has reached a level where the people who can move are quietly choosing the alternatives, and the people who can't move are absorbing increasingly difficult conditions. 10 states no one is staying in anymore, on the public record, in Census Bureau Vintage 2025 estimates, in IRS statistics of income migration data, in moving company reports, and in the daily decisions of millions of Americans choosing where to set up their lives. States where the property tax structure has not been reformed. States where the cost of living has separated from local wages. States where the fiscal pressure has compounded for decades. States where the climate-driven cost pressures have made staying harder. States where the federal employment foundation has been disrupted. States where the political conversation has rewarded almost everything except confronting the math. The American states gaining residents in 2026, places like South Carolina, Idaho, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas, are not winning because they're trendy. They're winning because they have specific cost structures, tax structures, climate conditions, and economic anchors that make staying easier than in the 10 states on this list. The 10 states on this list represent the rest of America. The Northeast states with property tax pressure and high cost of living. The Pacific states with housing costs that have separated from middle-income wages. The Mid-Atlantic states absorbing federal employment uncertainty. The Gulf states absorbing climate-driven insurance disruption. The Mountain state with 13 years of consecutive outflow. The upper Midwest state where the tax and spend model has stopped competing. The good news, you can know this. The Census Bureau publishes annual vintage estimates for free. The IRS statistics of income migration data runs continuously. Local news organizations track the moving trends honestly. You can read this. Most people don't. Most people watch the moving trucks pull up at the neighbor's house and never connect the dots to the state-level data. The reason no one is staying in these 10 states is because the structural conditions have shifted faster than the local political conversation has acknowledged. The math is harder. The cost is higher. The competition from neighboring states is stronger. And the residents who can move are quietly choosing the alternatives. If this list helped, share it with the friend who keeps insisting their state will turn around. Hit subscribe because next we're breaking down 10 American cities where the property tax bill just doubled, and you'll want to see if your city is on the list. Drop a comment if you left one of these 10 states or are considering it. And remember, the worst migration crisis isn't the loud one. It's the quiet one where 1.1 million people leave a single state in 5 years, and the state's leadership treats it as a temporary trend.